Thank you so much for joining us this lovely Wednesday morning in Sydney for today's edition of Get Psyched. I'm very excited and happy to have amazing Indigo practitioner Liz joining us this morning to chat all things anxiety. Welcome, Liz.
Thank you.
So we're going to start off today's sesh with a couple of questions for you, a couple of our F words. So we're going to kick off with, tell us how you're feeling at the moment.
Oh, well, ironically, there's a bit of anxiety for me, at the moment. I can feel the heart is beating. I haven't done an Instagram live. I haven't done many in my life. And so, yeah, there's a bit of anxiety. So
you're
right on topic. Right on topic.
There's a method actor here, guys. She's getting into it for you.
Totally, exactly. I'm going to embody it for everyone today.
Love that, love that. And so what are you failing at the moment?
Well, as a recovering perfectionist, I like to swap the word fail for feedback. And I think the place I'm getting the most feedback in at the moment is my parenting. So I'm still learning how to navigate, especially my 5-year-old's really wild, big emotions. And so I think that for me at the moment is where I'm growing and I'm leaning into that. Yeah.
I'm feeling like a lot of parents out there are probably right on side with you on that one.
Exactly. Yeah.
And our final F word is, what are you finding out about yourself?
I'm finding out about myself that I really enjoy downtime and more space in my life. Before this, I thought I was like, I think I did those tests and I was like 88% extrovert, overscheduled, always, organizing catch-ups with my own friends or catch-ups, little play dates for my kids. And I'm actually really enjoying slowing down and just having space in my life and not filling in every moment. So I've found that out about myself.
That's awesome. I think that's a beautiful lesson. And I hope that a lot of other people might be leaning into that a little bit more after sort of the world has kind of chilled out a bit for a lot of people and work has kind of chilled out a bit and they've been forced to, I guess, embrace the space a bit more.
Exactly. Yeah.
So let's get stuck into our juicy topic. It's, one that I'm personally very well acquainted with. And I'm sure, as Liz mentioned, just having the feels right now, and maybe many of you who are watching also are quite familiar with it.
Yeah.
Our old friend anxiety.
Our old friend anxiety. Yeah. Hello, anxiety.
Hey there,
I literally was saying that before the call. Like, oh, hi, anxiety. Yep, you're going to be with me today on this call.
So tell us, it's such a strange thing, and I think really only probably in the last sort of even like 10 to 5 years has it been something that we've sort of openly chatted about and acknowledged, whereas many people may have experienced it throughout time, and we never really gave it a name. So like, what is anxiety?
Anxiety, I mean, we all experience anxiety, and so to some degree, and obviously that's different for everyone, but anxiety is just intense worry and intense fear. And really, it's the brain trying to protect us. It's trying to protect us from a perceived threat or from uncertainty. So I think one of the myths of anxiety is that you either have it or you don't, but actually to an extent, we all experience that at some time in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So how is it that some people actually experience it to degrees in which it really starts affecting their life and their well-being?
Yeah, and again, I think there's so many reasons why that happens. One reason could be biology. That's what we used to focus on. It was all about our biology. And since, we've actually, we've come quite far in our understanding of, I think, anxiety from that point, that can certainly play a role. But there's also psychological factors, different personalities are more prone to anxiety. Like, hello, perfectionists, hello, like driven people, like people who, those sort of type A's, much more likely to get anxious. Mm-hmm. I think as well, there's social reasons why people get anxious. Maybe you were brought up by a parent who had anxiety, or maybe you experienced some sort of trauma in your life, or like some sort of event in childhood that's left you hypervigilant and kind of waiting for, I always mix up sayings. Is it the other shoe to drop or something? I don't know.
Yeah, the shooters,
That doesn't
right?
sound right. I always mix them up. Or, you know, there's also even just, you know, this was certainly my experience. I think so many of us aren't taught how to be with our emotions as kids. And so, again, that creates a disconnect between ourselves, and all of that, like trying to suppress our emotion, it causes so much internal stress.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't possibly know how to meet our needs if we don't know how we're feeling. So that can manifest in anxiety. And often what I find, you know, have found with my clients, but also in my own life, is underneath that anxiety can just be, you know, for me, it was like deep grief, or can be sadness, or all of these other feelings that we may not have felt in our life. And I think the other thing is that, you know, we often think of anxiety as like a personal issue, but in actual fact, there's so much in terms of how we live that contributes to anxiety. You know, we've come so far as a culture in terms of, I mean, gosh, we're so advanced in so many ways, and yet, you know, there's many basic psychological needs that don't get met in our culture, like the increase in loneliness, our disconnection from nature, the pace that we live at. Like, there's so many things, and I think that's important to remember as well, because otherwise we can take it really personally, like, you know, what's going on for me, when in actual fact, you know, there may be certain things which, you know, contribute to anxiety in terms of our, like I said, our personality or our upbringing, but also there's something to be said about the way that we're living as well, which kind of promotes and actually even rewards anxiety. You know, it rewards the type A's and the overachievers and the overextenders. And so, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that's something that I haven't really considered, but it's really important to. I suppose it's, you know, maybe just one of, I guess, the things that we have to also manage with almost the advancement of sort of technology, and the way that now we feel so much more in control of things than, you know, people would have 200 years ago. You know, we can have apps on our phone to pretty much let us know about everything. We can open up, you know, our browsers and read what's going on anywhere in the world at any time. So we do feel like we've really got a handle on things, and yet we still have to on the daily sit with that, you know, wow, I can't control everything, and not everything is, you know, manipulable on my end. So it's, it's interesting.
Yeah, totally. Like, such a myth of control in our culture. And I think, like, even at the moment, like what's been happening with coronavirus, it's really sort of brought to our attention that we have so much less control than what we think. And I think anxiety, you know, it's about trying to get control. And we kind of think that if we overthink things, and if we like go to every worst case scenario, and if we just know all of the information, then we'll somehow protect ourselves. But it just doesn't work like that, you know. Like, I think of all the times that I've like gone to worst case scenarios and ruminated, and, you know, you're overthinking, you just end up missing out on the moment. So I think so much of it, like what you're saying, is about learning, like, yeah, where do we have agency, and what do we have some control over, and where do we just actually need to learn how to let go. And surrender. Yeah.
Okay, so that takes us into the next part of this chat, which is, how do we do that? So how do we really get a handle on anxiety and not let it basically control our lives?
In terms of tips, you mean, like in general, or in terms of control? Like,
oh, whatever.
Oh, just whatever.
Whatever's useful.
Look, yeah, so how do we get, so I think one of the big things is we've got to try not to control our anxiety, because I think when we freak out about our anxiety, when we get anxious about being anxious, it just sort of exacerbates the whole thing. So, you know, there's so many things I think we can do to support ourselves when it comes to anxiety. And one thing is kind of what we touched on before, like really getting. Oh, did I just pause?
I lost you. See, this is
the
universe. We can't control it. Live streams, uncontrollable.
I do not have control over my internet connection. So yeah, getting clear on where we have control and where we don't have control, and just practicing letting go and really focusing on the stuff we do have control over. And I suppose, you know, stuff we do have control over is it's stuff like doing grounding techniques. You know, when we're anxious, we're in that fight or flight brain, and so getting into rest and digest. And there's so many different ways we can do that. One is by simply slowing down. That's a big one that I do. I just slow down when I notice I'm on the anxiety train. you know, getting in your body, whether that's through movement or walking in nature or cold showers, which also help calm us down. Breathing, I think, is one of the most incredible tools that we can use for anxiety. And it's because we always have the breath with us. And I used to sort of roll my eyes when people talk about breathing, because I just think, oh, it's just whatever. It's just seems too simple.
It's too easy. We don't like easy solutions.
We don't like easy. But it is so good. And, you know, like it is, because it just straight away, like almost immediately can take you out of that fight or flight and into that rest and digest. And the big thing I tell people about breathing, and the big thing I practiced in my own life, was practicing the breath when you're not anxious. Mm-hmm. Because the thing is, when you are anxious, your problem solving brain goes offline and your like creativity goes offline. And so we need to practice it when we're calm, so that it's a really well practiced tool, so that then when we are anxious, we think to pull it out. Otherwise, you'll never think to breathe if you haven't actually practiced it when you're calm. So, yeah.
For sure. I just finished watching the Michael Jordan documentary with my husband, and I was like, how can they shoot the ball in the last few seconds of the game and obviously have so much pressure and stress? And he's like, oh, because they've shot that, you know, angle of the ball this many times over this many years, that they've practiced it, that they can go to that even in these sort of high stress, high stakes, high anxiety times. And so I guess it's kind of similar, right? Like once we have those techniques, it's easier for us to go to them when we've practiced them before.
Exactly. Yeah, such a good example. And yeah, I think as well, you know, I sort of alluded to it before, another really great way to support yourself with anxiety is learning how to feel your emotions. Again, it all sounds so simple, and but that one is simple, yet it is difficult. And that's something which I really encourage people to do in therapy. It's where I learned to feel my emotions. It's one of the best things I think you can learn, because you know, once you know that you can sit with emotion and actually process what's going on, well, first of all, it doesn't then get stuck. So you're kind of releasing that stress. But also you then know how to support yourself. Like you're meeting your needs, and it kind of gives you a resilience that I think you really just then serves us. Because otherwise, I know for me before, when I was constantly running away from my emotions, I would numb them down with all sorts of techniques. It just built up the anxiety more and more and more. So learning how to actually get underneath the anxiety and process maybe stuff that happened in childhood or beliefs that you're holding about yourself, I think that is really can be really healing when it comes to anxiety.
For sure. Can I ask, for someone who maybe, you know, hasn't delved into therapy yet and is kind of loving this idea of feeling feelings but not quite sure how they might start with this, what's something that you might suggest as maybe a practice that they can do at home that might introduce them to getting in touch with their feelings a bit more?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just to recognize that feelings will pass. They're energy and motion. They will, like, we can live with this idea that if we go into the feeling, we're going to be stuck there forever and it's going to overpower us. But it's actually the opposite. When we go into it, like, it's the only way out is through. When we go into the feeling, it's actually that it has a peak and then it kind of peters off again. Like, it's almost like a wave. So I think the first thing is just knowing that it will pass, that it's not going to overtake you. In saying that though, it's important that you feel safe to feel it. And so, but I think it's important to realize that they will peak and then they will peter off. And so that they're not going to overtake you. And then just to do practices where you are connecting to your body, whether that's even through meditation or, yoga, like they can just sort of start to build that relationship with your body where you start to kind of just even have that connection. And then when you're experiencing an emotion, just going into your body, saying like, where is this feeling in my body right now? I actually will speak to my body and be like, what are you trying to tell me, when I get that like fluttering in my chest? And it can really give you a lot of information. So I probably gave you a few things just then, but I think simply it could just be connecting to your body when you're feeling an emotion. Connect to your body. Where is that feeling? And just knowing that it will pass.
Yeah. I think that also, you know, we give so much weight to, you know, our physical symptoms, that we try to make sense of them. We don't always recognize that it's actually a two-way street. So sometimes our mind is influencing how our body's feeling. It's not always our mind making sense of what our body's feeling. And I think that was in my experience with anxiety. You know, I get very somatic symptoms, lots of nausea, you know, shortness of breath, which a lot of people experience with anxiety as well. And I would often just be like, oh, I'm not feeling well, I'm feeling sick, I'm feeling this. I wouldn't allow it to be about anxiety. I would make it about my body. And instead of just allowing myself to sort of detach and go, well, maybe what's going on in here might be filtering down into what I'm feeling here, you know. I guess we all try to make sense of things, and with anxiety, it's a tricky one to sort of rationalize your way through, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So, so true. Yeah, I love that. Just being with the emotion and just like not always having to figure it all out, you know, just supporting yourself in that moment. Yeah.
When we can't see it, we think that we can outthink it. But if it's already in our head, it's like you're trying to fight with ghosts up there. You're like, how do you know that you're not just making it worse? Thank you so much, Liz. There's so much gold there today. And hopefully there's some tips that everyone can take home, and really just, you know, be aware that anxiety is just like something that we all experience, albeit to sort of different levels. But, you know, it's really your own journey with it and how you can come to be with it, because it's kind of also not that thing. It's like not a dragon you can vanquish. Some of us will, you know, have to be living with it forever. So we just kind of have to learn how.
Totally, but it definitely, exactly. But I do think it definitely can change. And the more we get into relationship with it, I think the big thing is, we need to get into relationship with it as opposed to trying to kind of squash it down and control it, because arguably control is kind of part of the problem with anxiety. We want control so much. And so instead to kind of get into relationship and go, wow, there's this process that's happening inside of me, and, you know, what can it teach me? And how, you know, for me, like, it can often tell me where I'm moving too fast, or what I'm not giving myself attention to, or old beliefs that are still showing up now that are kind of that are causing me pain, or that I need to look at. And so I think when we get into relationship with it, it can really change how we then live with anxiety. And it doesn't have to be as intense as what it may be right now. I think when I was in the throes of it, I thought that this was what life was going to be like, but there's so much that we can do to support ourselves. Yeah,
absolutely. There's hope, guys.
There's hope.
There's hope. And I really love the expression of having a relationship with your anxiety as opposed to controlling it, because I know that when I've had my chats with Indigo founder Mary, and she's always, you know, I'm always the one who's like, I want to get in control of this. And maybe if I really understand my vulnerability, or if I really understand my feelings, then I will be the master of them all. And you know what, just like you said, you know, control is part of the problem when it comes to anxiety. So we can't fight fire with fire. It's not going to be very effective. So just that space where we can even like nurture and be curious about parts of ourselves, as opposed to try and be like the lord and master over them all.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said.
Thank you so much again, Liz. For everyone who's watching, you can watch this full chat on Instagram TV, which we'll upload just after this. As always, you know, we've got an incredible range of over 30 mental health practitioners at the Indigo Project, just like Liz. So you can hit them up. You can chat to them about anxiety, about any things that you're working through at the moment that you need a little bit of extra support. There's lots of people who are really keen to get you the help and support that you need at Indigo. Once again, thanks so much, Liz.
Thank you so much. So good to see your face.
Thank you. Can't wait to chat a bit soon.